Hello, I'm SA, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin. Albert Lautman occupies a singular space in the history of mathematical philosophy. His brief career, tragically cut short during the Second World War, produced a body of work that continues to resonate with mathematicians and philosophers seeking to understand the nature of mathematical reality. To appreciate Lautman's contribution, one must first consider the intellectual landscape in which he developed. A landscape dominated by deep divisions concerning the very foundations of mathematics. The early 20th century witnessed a crisis in mathematical foundations, the unbridled success of 19th century mathematics, characterized by the development of non-Euclidean geometries and the rigorous formulation of calculus, was shadowed by the discovery of paradoxes within set theory. These paradoxes, such as Russell's paradox, threatened to undermine the entire edifice of mathematics, exposing potential inconsistencies at its very core. This crisis spurred intense investigation into the logical and philosophical underpinnings of the field. Two dominant schools of thought emerged, each proposing a radically different path to secure the foundations of mathematics: formalism and intuitionism. Formalism, championed by David Hilbert, sought to ground mathematics in a system of formal axioms and rules of inference. Hilbert's program aimed to demonstrate the consistency and completeness of mathematical systems through purely syntactical methods, treating mathematical statements as meaningless symbols manipulated according to predefined rules. The hope was that by proving the consistency of a formal system strong enough to encompass all of mathematics, one could definitively silence the specter of paradox and secure mathematics' claim to truth. However, formalism faced significant challenges. Gödel's incompleteness theorems, published in 1931, dealt a devastating blow to Hilbert's program. These theorems demonstrated that any sufficiently complex formal system would inevitably contain statements that are true but unprovable within the system itself. Furthermore, Gödel showed that the consistency of such a system could not be proven using only the resources of the system itself. This meant that the formalist project, in its original form, was fundamentally unrealizable. The dream of a purely syntactical justification of mathematics, free from any reliance on intuition or meaning, proved to be unattainable. Intuitionism, spearheaded by L.E.J. Brouwer, offered an alternative and equally radical approach. Brouwer rejected the formalist emphasis on axioms and formal systems, arguing that mathematics is fundamentally a mental activity rooted in our intuition of time and the possibility of constructing mathematical objects. According to intuitionism, a mathematical statement is true only if we can provide a mental construction that verifies it. This constructive requirement had far-reaching consequences, leading to the rejection of classical logic, particularly the law of excluded middle. For intuitionists, a statement such as either P or its negation is true is valid only if we possess a construction that either verifies P or verifies its negation. Since many mathematical statements, particularly those involving infinite sets, lack such constructive proofs, they are deemed neither true nor false, but simply meaningless. Intuitionism offered a compelling response to the paradoxes of set theory, proposing a more restrictive conception of mathematical truth that avoided the problematic infinities that gave rise to those paradoxes. This came at a significant cost. The intuitionistic rejection of classical logic and non-constructive methods led to the abandonment of large portions of classical mathematics. Many theorems and techniques that were considered essential by mainstream mathematicians were deemed illegitimate by intuitionistic standards. This created a deep chasm between intuitionistic mathematics and the established body of mathematical knowledge. The tension between formalism and intuitionism created a profound sense of unease within the mathematical community. Formalism, while initially promising, was undermined by Gödel's theorems. Intuitionism, while offering a secure foundation, seemed to require sacrificing too much of established mathematics. Many mathematicians found themselves caught between these two extremes, seeking a way to reconcile the rigor of formalism with the meaningfulness of mathematical intuition, and to preserve the vast and fruitful landscape of classical mathematics. It was within this context of foundational crisis and philosophical division that Albert Lautman began his intellectual journey. He was deeply influenced by both formalist and intuitionist ideas, recognizing the strengths and limitations of each. He sought a perspective that could transcend this dichotomy, offering a more comprehensive and satisfying account of mathematical reality. Lautman's early work reveals a deep concern with the ontological status of mathematical objects. He grappled with the question of whether mathematical entities, such as numbers, sets, and functions, possess an objective existence independent of human thought and language. This question, central to the philosophy of mathematics, has been debated since Plato, who argued for the existence of a realm of eternal and unchanging mathematical forms. Formalism, with its emphasis on syntax and formal systems, tended to downplay the ontological question, treating mathematical objects as mere symbols within a formal game. Intuitionism, with its focus on mental constructions, located mathematical reality within the mind of the mathematician. Lautman, however, sought a middle ground, arguing for the objective reality of mathematical structures without reducing them to either formal symbols or mental constructs. His initial approach involved exploring the inherent structure and relationships within mathematical theories themselves. He believed that the consistency and applicability of mathematics to the physical world suggested an underlying objective reality that transcends the limitations of both formalism and intuitionism. Mathematical structures for Lautman were not simply arbitrary creations of the human mind, but rather possessed an inherent necessity and intelligibility that reflected a deeper order within reality itself. This early focus on mathematical ontology laid the groundwork for his later, more developed theory of mathematical structures. His initial philosophical quest was to articulate how mathematics, though seemingly abstract, could reveal fundamental truths about the universe. Lautman's philosophical journey led him to develop a sophisticated theory of mathematical structures, a framework designed to navigate the treacherous waters between subjective idealism and rigid Platonism. Central to this theory is the concept of mathematical being, a term that encapsulates the objective reality Lautman ascribed to mathematical entities. This being is neither a figment of human imagination nor a mere symbolic game. It exists independently, possessing its own inherent properties and relationships. To fully appreciate Lautman's concept of mathematical being, it is crucial to understand the philosophical landscape he sought to traverse. Formalism, championed by figures like David Hilbert, viewed mathematics as a system of meaningless symbols manipulated according to prescribed rules. The truth of a mathematical statement, within this framework, resided solely in its derivability from a set of axioms. Intuitionism, spearheaded by Elie J. Brouwer, took a radically different stance, asserting that mathematical objects are mental constructions brought into existence through acts of intuition. A mathematical statement is true only if we can mentally construct a proof of it. Lautman found both perspectives inadequate. He recognized the rigor and precision of formalism, yet he felt it failed to capture the intuitive sense of meaning and purpose that mathematicians experience when engaged in their work. Reducing mathematics to a meaningless game seemed to deny the profound insights it provides into the structure of reality. Conversely, while he acknowledged the role of intuition in mathematical discovery, he believed that intuitionism risked collapsing mathematics into a subjective realm, undermining its objectivity and universal validity. His concept of structures emerged as a way to articulate this objective reality. Mathematical structures, according to Lautman, are the underlying forms or patterns that organize mathematical objects and their relationships. These structures are not simply sets of axioms or symbolic rules. They are objective entities that exist independently of any particular representation or interpretation. They are the deep underlying realities that give rise to the diverse and ever-expanding landscape of mathematical theories. Lautman's structuralism aimed to solve several persistent problems in the philosophy of mathematics. One central challenge was providing a coherent account of mathematical progress. How could mathematics, if it were merely a formal game or a subjective construction, continually expand its scope and deepen its understanding of the world? If mathematical concepts were simply arbitrary symbols, how could they lead to such profound and unexpected connections? Lautman argued that mathematical progress is driven by the discovery of new and more encompassing structures. As mathematicians explore these structures, they uncover new relationships and connections, leading to the development of new theories and applications. Another problem Lautman addressed was justifying the applicability of mathematics to the physical world. How could abstract mathematical concepts, developed in the realm of pure thought, prove so remarkably effective in describing and predicting physical phenomena? If mathematics were merely a human invention, its predictive power would seem inexplicable. Lautman argued that the applicability of mathematics stems from the fact that physical reality itself is structured mathematically. The structures that mathematicians discover are not simply abstract forms, they are the very forms that govern the behavior of the physical world. Lautman explicitly rejected both psychologism and logicism, two influential philosophical movements that sought to ground mathematics in something other than objective structures. Psychologism, popular in the 19th century, attempted to reduce mathematics to psychology, claiming that mathematical truths are ultimately based on psychological facts about human cognition. Lautman argued that psychologism failed to account for the objectivity and universality of mathematics. Mathematical truths are true regardless of whether anyone believes them or is capable of understanding them. They are not simply products of human psychology, but rather reflect an objective order that transcends the human mind. Logicism, championed by Bertrand Russell and Alfred North Whitehead, attempted to reduce mathematics to logic, claiming that all mathematical concepts can be defined in terms of logical concepts, and all mathematical truths can be derived from logical axioms. Lautman acknowledged the importance of logic in mathematics, but he argued that logicism failed to capture the creative and intuitive aspects of mathematical discovery. Mathematics, for Lautman, is not simply a matter of applying logical rules to a set of axioms. It involves a process of exploration, discovery, and insight that transcends the limitations of pure logic. Lautman's approach resonates with the broader phenomenological movement, which sought to uncover the essential structures of consciousness and experience. Phenomenology, pioneered by Edmund Husserl, emphasized the importance of describing phenomena as they appear to consciousness without imposing preconceived notions or theoretical frameworks. Lautman's structuralism can be seen as an attempt to apply phenomenological methods to the realm of mathematics, seeking to uncover the essential structures that underlie mathematical experience. Just as phenomenologists sought to identify the essential structures of consciousness, Lautman sought to identify the essential structures of mathematical being. The influence of Platonism on Lautman's views is undeniable, though he adapted it to fit his structuralist framework. Platonism, in its traditional form, posits the existence of a realm of abstract, eternal, and immutable forms or ideas, of which the objects we perceive in the physical world are merely imperfect copies. Mathematical objects, such as numbers and geometric figures, are often cited as examples of Platonic forms. Lautman shared with Platonists the belief that mathematical objects possess an objective reality that transcends the physical world. However, he diverged from traditional Platonism in his emphasis on structure and relationships. For Lautman, it is not the individual mathematical objects themselves that are most important, but rather the structures that organize them. These structures are not simply static forms, they are dynamic and evolving entities that are constantly being explored and refined by mathematicians. His Platonism is a structural Platonism, where the emphasis is on the interconnectedness and organization of mathematical entities rather than their isolated existence. The allure of structure and relationship, while central to Lautman's Platonism, represents only one facet of his complex philosophical vision. Later in his intellectual journey, Lautman turned toward dialectical philosophy, particularly that of Hegel, seeking to further illuminate the dynamic character of mathematical thought. This engagement with dialectics served as a powerful lens through which he examined the evolution and interconnectedness of mathematical concepts. Hegelian dialectics, at its core, proposes that progress occurs through a process of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. A thesis, an initial idea or concept, inevitably generates its own antithesis, a contradictory or opposing idea. The tension between these two then resolves into a synthesis, a new concept that incorporates elements of both while transcending their individual limitations. Lautman saw this dialectical process as a fundamental driving force in the development of mathematics. One of the key problems Lautman addressed with this dialectical approach was the inherent dynamism of mathematics. Traditional philosophies of mathematics often struggled to account for the way mathematical knowledge evolves over time. Platonism, for example, with its emphasis on eternal and unchanging forms, could seem to imply that all mathematical truths are already out there, simply waiting to be discovered. This view leaves little room for genuine innovation or the emergence of new mathematical concepts. Lautman, through the application of dialectics, offered an alternative perspective that emphasized the ongoing creation and transformation of mathematical knowledge. Consider, for instance, the historical development of calculus. The initial concept of infinitesimals, quantities smaller than any finite number, yet not precisely zero, served as the thesis. This concept, while intuitively appealing, was met with rigorous objections, the antithesis regarding its logical consistency. Mathematicians like Berkeley famously criticized infinitesimals as ghosts of departed quantities. The eventual resolution of this tension, the synthesis, came with the development of more rigorous theories of limits and the epsilon-delta definition of continuity. This new framework preserved the essential insights of infinitesimal calculus while grounding it in a more logically sound foundation. Lautman would view this progression as a prime example of the dialectical process at work in mathematics. Another challenge Lautman sought to address through dialectics was the apparent contradiction between different mathematical theories. Mathematics is rife with seemingly incompatible approaches and perspectives. Euclidean geometry, for example, operates on a set of axioms that differ substantially from those of non-Euclidean geometries. Similarly, classical analysis, with its emphasis on continuous functions, stands in contrast to discrete mathematics, which deals with finite structures. These apparent contradictions can be unsettling for those seeking a unified and coherent picture of mathematical reality. Lautman proposed that these contradictions are not necessarily signs of incompleteness or inconsistency, but rather opportunities for further development. He saw opposing mathematical concepts as engaging in a dialectical dance, each challenging and refining the other. The synthesis that emerges from this interaction is a more comprehensive and nuanced understanding of the underlying mathematical reality. His dialectical approach also sought to promote a more holistic understanding of mathematics. He resisted the tendency to view mathematical disciplines as isolated and independent domains. Instead, he emphasized the interconnectedness of different areas of mathematics, arguing that progress in one area often depends on insights and techniques developed in another. This holistic perspective aligns with his structuralist emphasis on relationships and organization. Mathematical concepts gain their full significance only when seen in the context of the broader mathematical landscape. Lautman's interpretation of mathematical progress as a dialectical process differs significantly from other accounts. Some historians of mathematics emphasize the cumulative nature of mathematical knowledge, seeing progress as a steady accumulation of new results and techniques. Others focus on the role of individual genius, attributing breakthroughs to the insights of exceptional mathematicians. Lautman, while acknowledging the importance of both cumulative knowledge and individual creativity, placed greater emphasis on the dynamic interplay between opposing ideas and the transformative power of dialectical synthesis. His view suggests that mathematical progress is not simply a matter of adding new bricks to an existing structure, but rather of fundamentally reshaping the structure itself. New mathematical theories challenge existing assumptions, expose hidden contradictions, and ultimately lead to a more profound understanding of the underlying mathematical reality. This process is not always smooth or linear. It can involve periods of intense debate, confusion, and even temporary setbacks. However, Lautman believed that the dialectical process ultimately leads to a more robust and coherent body of mathematical knowledge. Despite the compelling nature of Lautman's dialectical approach, it is not without its critics. One potential limitation lies in the difficulty of identifying clear-cut theses, antitheses, and syntheses in every instance of mathematical development. While some historical episodes, such as the development of calculus, lend themselves readily to a dialectical interpretation, others may be more resistant to this framework. Critics might argue that Lautman's approach imposes a particular narrative structure on the history of mathematics that does not always accurately reflect the complexities of the actual historical process. Another concern is the potential for subjectivity in identifying the correct synthesis. Different mathematicians may have different ideas about how to resolve a particular contradiction, and there is no guarantee that the synthesis that ultimately prevails is necessarily the best one in any objective sense. The selection of a particular synthesis may be influenced by social, cultural, or even personal factors, rather than purely logical considerations. Furthermore, some philosophers question the inherent progressivism implied by the dialectical model. The assumption that each synthesis represents a genuine improvement over the preceding thesis and antithesis may not always be warranted. It is conceivable that a synthesis could represent a narrowing of scope or a loss of valuable insights from the earlier stages of the dialectical process. Despite these potential limitations, Lautman's engagement with dialectical philosophy offers a valuable perspective on the dynamic character of mathematical thought. It provides a framework for understanding how mathematical knowledge evolves over time, how seemingly contradictory theories can coexist and interact, and how progress in mathematics often involves a process of creative destruction and synthesis. His work encourages us to see mathematics not as a static collection of facts and formulas, but as a living and evolving body of knowledge that is constantly being shaped by the interplay of ideas. Lautman's intellectual legacy extends far beyond the confines of pure mathematics, resonating deeply within the realms of structuralist philosophy, particularly in the intellectual landscape of mid-20th century France and beyond. Figures such as Gilles Deleuze and Alain Badiou, while diverging in their specific philosophical projects, found in Lautman's conceptualization of mathematical structures a powerful framework for understanding the nature of being, difference, and the very conditions of thought. Deleuze, in his exploration of difference and repetition, drew inspiration from Lautman's emphasis on the dynamic and generative character of mathematical ideas. For Deleuze, mathematics provided a model for understanding how difference could be produced through a process of continuous variation and transformation. Mathematical structures, in this view, are not static entities, but rather dynamic systems that generate new possibilities and new forms of order. Deleuze saw mathematics as a realm of pure becoming, where concepts are constantly evolving and differentiating themselves. Lautman's work provided a rigorous mathematical foundation for Deleuze's philosophical vision, demonstrating how abstract structures could give rise to concrete realities. The concept of the mathematical idea, as explored by Lautman, resonated with Deleuze's own understanding of the virtual and its capacity to generate the actual. Badiou, similarly, found in Lautman's work a valuable resource for his own philosophical project, particularly his attempt to develop a mathematical ontology. Badiou argued that mathematics, rather than being a mere tool for describing the world, provides the very framework for understanding being itself. Mathematical structures, in this view, are not simply abstract concepts, but rather the fundamental building blocks of reality. Badiou saw set theory, in particular, as providing a rigorous and consistent language for describing the structure of being, and he drew on Lautman's work to support his claim that mathematics has a privileged access to the truth. Lautman's focus on the inherent objectivity of mathematical structures, independent of human thought, aligned with Badiou's own commitment to a Platonist ontology. The enduring relevance of mathematical truths, as highlighted by Lautman, reinforced Badiou's conviction that mathematics reveals fundamental aspects of reality. The adoption and adaptation of Lautman's ideas by these later philosophers involved a selective appropriation and reinterpretation of his work. Deleuze, for example, emphasized the dynamic and generative aspects of Lautman's thought, while Badiou focused on the ontological implications of mathematical structures. Both philosophers, however, recognized the significance of Lautman's contribution to understanding the relationship between mathematics, thought, and reality. They saw in his work a powerful challenge to traditional philosophical assumptions about the nature of knowledge and the limits of human understanding. Evaluating Lautman's philosophical approach to mathematics reveals both strengths and weaknesses. Among its strengths is its ability to bridge the gap between abstract mathematical concepts and concrete philosophical concerns. Lautman's work demonstrates how mathematics can be a source of profound philosophical insight, providing new perspectives on fundamental questions about being, knowledge, and reality. He successfully integrated seemingly disparate perspectives, such as Platonism and dialectical thinking, into a coherent framework for understanding mathematical progress. A potential weakness of Lautman's approach lies in its reliance on a somewhat idealized picture of mathematical practice. Some critics might argue that his emphasis on the inherent objectivity and rationality of mathematics downplays the role of social, cultural, and historical factors in shaping mathematical knowledge. It is conceivable that Lautman's focus on the internal logic of mathematical structures overlooks the ways in which mathematics is influenced by external forces, such as the needs of science, technology, and society. Furthermore, Lautman's dialectical approach, while providing a valuable framework for understanding the evolution of mathematical thought, may be susceptible to criticism. The inherent progressivism implied by the dialectical model, with each synthesis representing an improvement, may be questioned. A synthesis could represent a narrowing of scope or a loss of valuable insights. Despite these potential limitations, Lautman's philosophical approach offers a valuable perspective on the nature of mathematical reality and the ongoing challenges of understanding its relationship to human thought. He compels us to consider the dynamic and interconnected nature of mathematical knowledge, moving beyond static conceptions of mathematical objects. The enduring challenges of understanding the nature of mathematical reality continue to fuel debate among philosophers of mathematics. Questions about the ontological status of mathematical objects, the relationship between mathematics and the physical world, and the nature of mathematical truth remain central to contemporary discussions. Lautman's contributions to this field are significant in that they offer a unique synthesis of Platonism, structuralism, and dialectics, providing an alternative to both formalist and intuitionist extremes. Formalism, which views mathematics as a purely formal system of symbols and rules, struggles to account for the apparent applicability of mathematics to the physical world. If mathematics is simply a game played according to certain rules, then it is difficult to understand why it should be so effective in describing and predicting natural phenomena. Lautman's Platonism, with its emphasis on the objective reality of mathematical objects, provides a more compelling explanation for the applicability of mathematics. Intuitionism, which grounds mathematics in the constructive activity of the human mind, faces the challenge of explaining the apparent objectivity and universality of mathematical truths. If mathematics is simply a product of human intuition, then it is difficult to understand why mathematicians from different cultures and historical periods should arrive at the same conclusions. Lautman's structuralism, with its focus on the inherent logic and coherence of mathematical structures, offers a way to reconcile the subjective and objective aspects of mathematical knowledge. Lautman's unique synthesis provides a rich and nuanced perspective on the nature of mathematical objects and their relationship to human thought and the physical world. He challenges contemporary philosophers of mathematics to consider the dynamic and interconnected nature of mathematical knowledge, moving beyond static conceptions of mathematical objects and embracing the ongoing process of mathematical discovery. His work serves as a reminder that mathematics is not simply a tool for solving problems, but a profound source of insight into the fundamental nature of reality itself. The interplay of ideas, the constant striving for greater generality and coherence, and the enduring pursuit of mathematical truth are all testaments to the power and beauty of mathematical thought. We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.